Hey guys, so it's let's see, it is time for Mythborn Live. Okay, let's start first. It is, as far as I believe, Tuesday around 3 p.m. October 9th. Pretty excited about this week. Let's see, what are the things we can tell you? Housekeeping. First of all, I'll say the fun stuff for last. Good news: the audiobook is killing it. You guys are amazing. Michael Kramer, his voice really is great. And if you haven't checked out the audiobook, go to Audible, go to Audible or Amazon. Spend a credit, check it out, or listen to the sample, check it out. If you don't like it, obviously don't get it. But if you're in a car for long periods of time, or if you just don't have the time to drag a book around with you, or if you just like to listen to stories, Michael Kramer does a great job of narrating the various voices. I'm very impressed. It's just such a pleasure to hear my own words said back to me, with such sort of emotion, and but he doesn't ham it up and overdo it. I really have enjoyed it. So far, I mean, last time I checked, I had 3 reviews, but they were all 5-star. So 3 is not a giant data set, but for you 3 reviewers, thank you. But you know what? If you get a chance and you can post some reviews, and if you liked it, however you felt, post it. It helps other people decide whether they're gonna, plunk down the credit or not, or buy it outright. But guys, it's been awesome. We've sold a lot of units on the first few days, and it seems that the pace is picking up. People are hearing about it. Maybe it's just people like to listen to audiobooks now instead of reading. I don't know. But I'm pretty excited. It's nice. I'm always pleasantly surprised that something I do back here in this office actually gets out there and and affects the general public. So thank you so much. I really want to extend my gratitude for giving the audiobook a chance. And look, I mean, the more of you guys who buy this, the better able I'm going to be able to convince people to put money down for the second audiobook, and that's going to happen. We're going to do it. So, hey, hope you guys like that. Couple other things that are going on that I wanted to share with you all. I opened my first Patreon page, hopefully my only Patreon page. And so, it's called Mythborn Live. We're going to be making little adjustments to it as we go along. It's not perfect yet. It was a first launch over the weekend, and what I sort of call a soft launch, so I could just test out like how it worked. The idea behind this page is to sort of put a vehicle for those of you who want to donate a little bit so that we can keep the lights on, that I can get, good equipment. I think you've noticed slowly, like, things are getting better. If you look at my early videos, and this is probably true for almost anyone who goes online, but, the early ones, you have sound problems and lighting problems and issues, things like that. And slowly we get like a slightly better camera, or, the lighting gets a little better, audio gets a little more clear. The thing I haven't done yet is sort of interstitials, putting in video, putting in still frames to show you things. And my plan is to use the Patreon page and those the content there to sort of take this content up a step. So that page has a number of different tiers. It essentially is selling the book and the audiobook for the same price you would pay for if you were online. But instead, it would be going into the Patreon funds. It may be even slightly advantageous, like in the order of a few dollars maybe, but not a huge difference between the two. I'd have to check. But we want to make it worthwhile for people to become patrons. The biggest thing it does is I'm going to be launching Mythborn Live Plus, which is a new channel. And essentially what it's going to do is it's going to use all the Mythborn Live content from YouTube that you guys already see. And I'm going to take each of those episodes and I'm going to expand upon them. So maybe do, another 20 to 30 minutes at the back end of each of those episodes where I go into what I talked about with you guys, but now I add to it visuals, I add animations, I add, you know, different things to show what's going on. And I hope you enjoy it. I think it'll be worth it. I think the subscription to that level is like $5 a month or something like that. And, you know, I'm going to play with those numbers, but ultimately it allows us to have, you know, a little bit of revenue coming in so that we can do things like these video cuts that, you know, right now I'm doing everything, which is fine. I actually taught myself over the weekend how to do an interstitial cut using Adobe Premiere, which I had no idea about. And I learned all kinds of new things like J cuts and L cuts and, you know, cutaways and things like that. So maybe I'll do a video on that too for those new YouTubers who are just trying to figure all this stuff out, because boy, was I confused. And I think there's probably, I know there's a lot of great videos out there already, so you don't need to hear my voice droning on when there's people out there who know better than I do about what they're doing. Maybe what I'll do is do an interstitial and cutaway and montage moment of all the mistakes I've made. That will show you my skills at cutting, and it'll be hilarious because you'll see me literally hitting my head like this, like over and over again, as I cut audio and cut video. I didn't mean to, and simply look completely bewildered watching the screen because I don't know why it's doing what it's doing. Okay, so Mythborn Live Plus or Mythborn Live something like that will be, maybe it'll be called that, Mythborn Live something like that, will be on the Patreon page. Look for it next couple weeks. Actually, the page is up, and I'm going to be starting to populate that with videos very quickly. So the updated and additional content videos, I got to think through the process of that because, you know, I'm still hopefully working also on the books and things like that. So I don't want to take away too much time from writing and all that. But I do want to give the patrons something for their support. All of you out there, all of you watching, all of you that hit the subscribe button, you are helping us every day in keeping the lights on and keeping this channel going well. So I do sincerely appreciate that, and I want to thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now the fun part. Tuesday, I keep thinking I'm getting better at this, but I'm not. I think maybe is just something I'm part of my vocabulary. I'm just gonna. Well, that's easier if I just keep. You know. Oh, there's so many coins that go into here. So as I filled my jar up so that so that I can, it's just easier if I just do this. So I can pay my kid. There's a thing for every time I say I'm trying my best, and I just don't think I'm getting better at it. This could be good. Today, what are we going to talk about? Well, you know what? Last week we talked about cryptids and we talked about star maps in Egypt, ancient star maps. Last night I was on a show called Night Dreams, Paranormal Research by Gary Alexander. You guys can Google it, tweeted it out. You guys can check it out. I'll try and put the audio up here with a still frame or maybe just some moving, you know, screens or something in the background of the broadcast. It was really fun, really great. Gary is incredibly knowledgeable about a lot of things, and you know, we talked about a lot of things that had to do with how I have thought through, well, basically what's interesting in the world today as far as different kinds of mysteries that have been solved or not solved, and also how do we go about how do those things inspire Mythborn so that I can put them into the book, pique your interest if you hadn't heard about it before, and maybe inspire you to do some research into different kinds of, you know, forgotten realms, lost cities, ancient artifacts, things like that. And you know, so I've borrowed from different mysteries that involve things like the pyramids, ancient star maps. As you guys know, we talked about that last week. I've gone through different missing islands like High Brazil, Brissal, and then Atlantis. We've, you know, looked at some creatures and cryptids. And I think ultimately what's interesting in when you look at that is that there's so much information out there about what about these things that have been mistaken for and never explained, but they're still interesting, cool mysteries to follow. And I think ultimately the fun part about trying to get into that and go into that level of discovery is it helps us learn. It helps us learn about this world and about potentially precursor civilizations that are ancient and potentially had high technology. And we talked about this before, but if you think about 10,000 years going by, and you've seen that show, This Is a World Without Humans, and it pretty much shows that what happens in about 10,000 years is everything is gone except for stone. But imagine in 100,000 years, like, so from the last time Yellowstone erupted was 630,000 years ago. Now it erupts every 600 to 800,000 years, and every time it erupts, it essentially might create sort of a mini ice age. It could theoretically create worldwide devastation depending on the size of the eruption. The last eruption 630,000 years ago was, let's see, 240 cubic miles of volcanic ash and dust. To give you a comparison, Mount St. Helens was 0.24 cubic miles, so about a quarter of a mile of cubic ash and dust in volume. So a quarter of a mile, 0.24 to 240, is moving the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 places, 5 places. So was that 10,000 times bigger? I could be wrong in the math. I don't feel like pulling out a calculator now, but you guys could do it. You figure it out. So like, it's huge, right? I mean, the last eruption was huge. And so if you think about that and its consequences on our climate, it could spell disaster, certainly for the region. And, if combined with other cataclysms that happen, a badly timed meteor strike or anything else, you could see worldwide devastation. And so the question is, forget 10,000 years, 600,000 years ago to now is, 60 10,000 year periods. So if there were a civilization 300,000 years ago, would anything be left? Let's say Atlantis was 300,000 years ago, and it was in that spot they found just off the coast of West Africa, where there's a circular and a circle type of formation with fresh water in it. You guys could look this up. It's a cool area. And again, I'll be putting up images of this that they found. But here's a place that is the circles are from a satellite. They're measured to be exactly as big as what was described in ancient records for Atlantis. The number of circles is the same. The fact that there's fresh water in the middle is the same. The fact that it was described as a world that had Atlantis had mountains to the north. That is exactly what this place looks like. The fact that it's described as Atlantis had a lot of elephants. They found an elephant's graveyard kind of area that's a huge things of tusks and bones of elephants that had died. The fact that it opened to the sea on the south side, that's exactly what happened. The fact that there's a plain to the south, that's exactly what this place looks like. And when you look at where the water was, the edge of the ocean, back some thousands of years, what you find is like the fact that they have the coast would have been much closer to the city. The water is receded in all that time. So I think what's really great is ultimately having the fact that there's just so much opportunity to look at all this stuff here. Sorry guys, I'm just looking for something to be sure that we don't have a problem later. Anyways, okay, all this will be edited out on the Patreon channel. Okay, so today, what I wanted to talk about was the fact that nanotech as a weapon. So I brought this up before, and I wanted to follow up a little bit because I gave it a lot of thought before I started writing Mythborn. So think about this. Nanotechnology as a weapon is often described in books and things like that as the ability for someone to say, shift their hand into a blade. Or, I mean, if you think about the Terminator, the silver liquid one, that was like a living, liquid metal. That liquid metal is nanotech, right? I mean, it's tiny, tiny microscopic liquid metal machines. I mean, theoretically, I guess it could be a hyper intelligent cube somewhere in there, and then it's controlling the entire metallic mass through some kind of applied magnetic fields. But right now, I think they're both crazy explanations. The easier one is to imagine the entire thing being made up of tiny, tiny, nanoparticles that are smart, and in aggregate are like a giant living brain, where thousands of these cells work together to think through things like a termite mound or army ants, right? They work in concert, and the entire hive is sort of an additive intelligence of all the little tiny parts of all the hive, or intelligence of all the little tiny parts of all the hive, or I should say, I'm not entirely sure ants work like that, but in science fiction, you have aliens where the entire hive mind is a function of all the little pieces that make up that hive. And so I think of nanotech that way sometimes. So I thought, well, how would nanotech be used as a weapon, and what would be more unique to nanotechnology that you wouldn't see from, say, just a samurai wielding a blade or a guy with a gun or something else? And I don't know how many of you have seen a movie where this guy it's called Upgrade. Really, actually, really a good movie. The ending surprised me. I don't know why, and maybe I don't want to give it away. I really want people to be surprised, but I recommend seeing it. Upgrade took the ending in a slightly different direction than I thought it would go, and mainly it played upon my bias towards humans. And so I think, so anyways, in that story, you had these different characters who had been upgraded, right? And their upgrades were a chip that had been implanted, and that chip sort of sent feelers out throughout the system. They sort of piggybacked on your nerves, and then ultimately they used your entire nervous system plus their own upgrades through your nervous system to give you better and better capabilities. Now, what was interesting in that movie was there was a spot where one of the upgraded cyber soldiers hunting the main character, he ended up killing a guy by sneezing. And so he sneezed, and you saw like this slow motion cutaway of the sneeze going outwards, but instead of it being tiny droplets of phlegm or whatever, what instead you saw were tiny little flechettes. They were like microscopic needles with barbs on the end and little, guidance things. And they almost looked like little tiny hooks that had been fired out. And they flew towards the victim's face. The guy breathed in. You saw the hooks go into his nose and connect themselves inside. And then slowly they multiplied. And what they did when they multiplied those hooks, they just basically ripped the guy up from the inside. And so the guy became a bag of liquid, essentially, and he died. I know, but very cool idea. Now, before I saw that, I'd always thought to myself, nanotech is the science of the very, very, very small. Macro attacks of nanotechnology almost seem to me to be a waste of energy, when in fact you could achieve your objective of neutralizing an opponent by just attacking them microscopically. So if you think about the idea of nanotechnology attacking, I saw there an opportunity to be nanotech, micro nanotech agents that are working on behalf of their host. So when I thought about Mythborn and I thought about how the magic worked, the central point to the magic, or sorry, to the nanotech, is the science's magic point, was this idea of possession. So you have this, entire world where these Eris, these demons, are possessing humans and taking over their bodies. Well, think of what possession is. Possession is, in supernatural terms, it's, some spirit going into you and, either killing your spirit or, pushing down on your spirit until it takes over your body and then it runs your body. But how would that work if this was science? So again, I wanted to make sure that all the magic in Mythborn was defendable, that it was reproducible, and that it was hinged and based on something that is scientifically possible. And so what I saw when it came to nanotech was these tiny microscopic sentient agents, which are the nanoparticles, which in aggregate are sentient beings. They can invade you at a microscopic level through every pore and orifice and, skin cell, whatever. And as they do, they can go in and to some extent take over as deeply as they want what you are. They can mimic every cell within you to function the same way, but actually belong to them. You would be a synthetic organism on the inside. You'd be changed into a synthetic organism on the inside, but nothing about you would outwardly change. I've toyed with the idea of the act of possession actually has this sort of vomitous kind of, shedding of the proteins and molecules that are now no longer needed. So if a nanitic being were to take over a flesh and blood being, as every cell got replaced, the misused or unneeded cells basically were vomited out and just or oozed out as like protein sludge or dead red, dead white, phlegm. And imagine stepping out of that gross stuff is a perfect being, the best and most perfect version of you, because it would shed itself of all the things that weren't right with you, right? And you would just be a clean being stepping out. But the brain inside here, while it would have all your memories and everything else, it wouldn't be you. You'd be gone. And what its consciousness would take over with a synthetic brain that it had mimicked from using your brain as an output, as an imprint. I'm sorry, as a blueprint. And so then I saw, and I might still use that at some point, the goat coming out. But part of me also thought you need energy to make the change. What if instead the nanites went in and they used each cell's energy, they consumed it and used that energy to replicate it? So what you really got in terms of possession was heat, potentially, or a flash of light or things like that. And, I didn't really emphasize it too much in the first couple of books because I had the Nephilim taking over a number of different elves, and the action was fast, and I didn't stop to sort of describe it. Also because I wasn't sure that was the direction I wanted to go in, even though I knew nanotech was, in fact, sentient beings were taking over, were possessing these characters. And think about this. There's no way for that character to be returned once they're possessed because there is no character left. That person who was there is gone. What's left is a copy of them made out of synthetic nanotech. So what I want to do is put a pause on that, let that idea sink in for a little bit. We'll take this up again in part 2 next week of Nanotech as Magic, or Nanotech as a Weapon. What I'm going to be doing is sort of thinking through some examples. But the reason why this is even coming up is spending a lot of time in book 4 showing what happened during the colonists' arrival on the planet. And also, I'm writing up the character list for the next series. And that next series takes place in the galactic milieu in which this world Eden exists. And so those people, I want to explain what happens in a world where, imagine Eden is the last place humanity is. Imagine if at this point in the galaxy, synthetic life forms are taken over, and over time, being born flesh and blood is no longer necessary. And the only people left are these colonists who have basically, because of an accident, ended up off the grid on Eden. What does that mean for them? What does it mean for flesh and blood beings? How do synthetic beings react to this news? Are they an oddity? Are they hunted? Are they going to be kept, potentially put in a zoo? Are they the remnants of of who we were, or even worse, are they not, because they are the product of dreams and myths and legends, and they're not actually the true humanity, other than they are biologically human. So I'm going to explore some of that in the next series, and to do that effectively, I want to make sure I laid the foundations correctly in books 4 and 5. So we're thinking about nanotech as a weapon, and also about how a world and a galaxy of nanotech actually works. A lot of inspiration if you want to read. I would recommend highly books by Peter Hamilton. He did something called the Reality Dysfunction, and I think it's a great way to go. For those of you who've been on Netflix, you've seen the Takashi Kovacs novels by Richard K. Morgan. Excellent reads. Altered Carbon. Excellent reads. I think these are writers who have not just envisioned a world that's science fiction in the future, but they have written how society is changed by the technology that has been embraced as an everyday tech. And I think that's a much harder thing to do. It's easy to write about, for me, I shouldn't say it's easy to write. For me, it's easy to write about giant robots and, human pilots and mechs and fighting. It's hard to write about everyday science as a tool, as a unified part of society, and how society itself has changed because the science is so it's so pervasive. So imagine, and it has been done very effectively, but imagine books prior to cell phones, right, where they talk about instant communication all over the planet with anyone. Well, we have that today, pretty much, almost. Imagine being able to put your food in a box and it heats it up. We have that in microwaves, right? So I think it's interesting to envision a world in which sentient AI, microscopic sentient AI, exist. They have a life, and they aren't any more good or evil than we are. But what happens when we, the biological life, is a endangered species? How are we treated, and what do we face? I think that's something that I'm really interested in exploring in the next series. Definitely through some kind of violent militaristic eye. Hey, it was great having Mythborn live with you guys again. I look forward to Thursday. Just a little repeats on the housekeeping. Don't forget, November 10th, I will be at the Barnes & Noble in Rockville, signing books, shaking hands. I will be coming on the Patreon page. Check us out at www.patreon.com/Mythborn Media. I'm going to put up some signage on this at some point after this broadcast, so you guys will be able to see all that stuff. Please like and subscribe. I never know what side it's on, but I believe it's over I think it's over here. Anyways, I think it's over here because this will be reversed. So yeah, I think it's over here. And hey, give us a like, give us a subscribe, check it out. Leave me more comments so I know cool stuff you want to talk about. I want to review some things next week, tell you what games I'm playing, and talk about a new book I just opened by Timothy Zahn, an old name who I think does military cyberpunk slash, mech type combat. I say upgraded, human combat really, really well. So we'll see if we can bring that up next time. Hey, thanks, guys. I had a great time, and I hope to see you guys next week. Mythborn Live. Thanks.